God, our Father, we thank you now for this day. We thank you for health and strength. We thank you for those who are assembled here, Father, to take care of the business of government of this town. We pray now, God, that you just bless each and every family that's represented here, Father, and we just ask that you get the glory out of all we do. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Hey, how you
Roll call.
Pupin,
doing? Here.
Cooper,
Present.
Diamond, Callahan,
here.
Winters. Here. Public is invited to have public input on agenda items. 2 minutes per agenda item. Must be recognized by the chair before speaking. Item number 1, discuss proposed ordinance amendment pertaining to B&B to add additional details to initial format.
Okay, we, on last Thursday, we introduced this ordinance in the language that's provided to you already. And you asked that we have a special meeting to do any amendments that needed to be done. But I'll go ahead and read it to you as I did last week. Bed and breakfast means a residence that provides temporary or vacation rental of a house and is the residence of the owner of the house, and which provides temporary lodging to guests on a commercial basis as follows. No more than 2 rooms may be devoted to the bed and breakfast. Any food service is limited to breakfast for those purchasing lodging, and this food service may not be advertised to the general public as a restaurant or cafe. And the owner must provide at least 1 off-street parking space for each guest room. The owner shall meet all state and local fire, sanitation, and food service rules and regulations. In addition, all licenses, including town occupational, shall be acquired, and all sales and other taxes shall be filed and paid, including the Tangible Parish Hotel Motel tax, in a timely fashion. So, last week there were some things that we said that you might want to adjust or add or amend. So we're here tonight to make sure we get this done so we can vote this in on next town council meeting. Anything from the council members?
Mayor, question.
Go.
When you said about the off-street parking, is it big enough for, to have that done up there?
I think the front section of where they go in, they could actually create a parking spot.
Okay.
Or 2 there, because you got 2 rooms, so you have to have at least 2.
And it won't be commercial at all, am I correct?
No, we're not trying to show it.
Great.
May I ask a question?
Yes, ma'am, you may.
The property that they own has directly behind the property on the north end, on the side, there's a lovely little garage that has a studio apartment on the top of it. So if it's saying 2 rooms in the home, does that mean 2 rooms in the home and then they can, I know the apartment used to be rented out to locals in town, like for years at a time or whatever. It was not considered a B&B. It was rented out.
Okay.
And I didn't know if some sort of language needed to be included with regards to that. Because it's an outbuilding.
Probably so, because what we were thinking, actually my thoughts, I don't know if they were thinking, was the actual home itself.
That's what I
with
was
the 2 rooms,
thinking.
not the detached.
Right, that's what I'm
That's
thinking,
what I
just
was
the
thinking
home.
also.
Just the home.
But I
Yeah.
thought I'd ask.
So we may need, Mr. Bruce, we may add that language in here saying just the physical home structure itself and not any other attachments can be labeled as B&B rooms.
One last thing, man. Okay, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Mr.
I was looking at what Covington has.
Okay, talk to us.
They state that it'll be operated within the principal structure or any accessory structure such as guest houses, garden apartments, studio apartments that were certified for residential occupancy. The total number of guest rooms for the entire site shall not exceed 3 or 5 depending on the zoning district, and the total number of structures shall not exceed 2. So Covington does allow that,
Does allow
but you can
it.
only have one outbuilding like that that's done.
Okay.
It varies from town to town based on what they want to provide provisions for. I've seen other B&Bs. I've explored the Airbnb platform. Sometimes it can vary with how people have their setup done. I saw in New Orleans's codes here, I know we're not New Orleans, but I'm just using it as an example, that they provide provisions for up to 6 sleeping rooms. There are 2 brackets, however, for 1 or 2 rooms. The business license will be $200, and or at least it's a fee, and it's not the business license itself. And for up to 6, up to 5, it'll be $600. Once you reach 7, it then is designated as a hotel, and you need a lot more other provisions for it. So I think that this ordinance might be made in reference to the case in point on I'm not sure what street it is, Avenue D, correct? Avenue E. But I think that we should try and write one that might provide for other hypothetical scenarios that would be potentially larger than the setup that they have there.
I disagree. 3 at the max.
Why?
Because just that we don't have the area for that, and I just don't think 7 is. 6 to 7. I'm not for that. I'm not for 6 or 7.
Yeah, I
Okay.
don't see why you couldn't have that outbuilding as one.
Okay.
Also, that would be 3 total.
That would
or-
be 3 total.
Unless that's part of the 2 that he had.
Okay. Mr. George?
Well, the reason that you have these is because you want to limit the impact of this commercial venture in a residential area. So that house is big enough, Councilman Cooper, to probably house 10 people in it. But that's not going to be good for any of the people who live in that neighborhood.
No, that's why I mentioned hypothetical outside of this case in point.
No, I'm with you, and so what I'm saying to you is that listening to what Bruce said a minute ago about Covington's, it's very good because it deals with principal structures, and then you can say a total of however many for whatever you guys want. I mean, it's your call on that one. But that's the way that I would approach it. I think we need to limit it. And then after you get off this topic, I have 2 other suggestions, and then I'll shut up.
Yeah. I like what Covington is doing, since there's another home or 2 that has a detached structure to it. So that might be something that we could think of, 2 within the principal structure, and the next one would be the detached structure as the 3rd one, if that is something that we're thinking about.
And the reason why I'm saying it, like I said, because of the residential area, we don't. If it was a commercial area, yeah, but no, it's not in the residential.
What we're talking about right now, Councilman Diamond, is the principal structure having only 2 allotted rooms for occupancy for the B&B. However, that particular property has a detached structure with it, and it has a bedroom up top. So Mr. Bruce was reading out to us about Covington having one that says you can have 2 in your principal one, and if you have a detached structure, that could be your 3rd, but no more than 3.
Okay,
So that's where we are right now.
so referring to the number of rooms that could be,
Use that B&B.
gotcha, okay.
So,
That could be leased at a time, there?
there. So,
Oh, so is this at a time, or is this, I'm saying, if you have more space or whatever, it's just there, or?
This means that at max you could only have 2. Well, 3.
2
2 rooms.
inside the principal,
Okay,
and then the detached structure is
Okay.
1 extra.
okay.
Mayor, can you give me just a little more clarity on what you mean?
See, they have a house, might as well say behind it, with a little garage if you've ever passed by there. Just kind of like what Paul D has behind his house, the garage, and above it used to be a living quarter. So what they're saying is in the principal structure, the actual dwelling itself, you can only have 2 bedrooms designated for B&B. However, in Covington, Mr. Bruce read to us that they allow for, if you have a detached structure such as they do, that has a bedroom or something above it, then you can use that also. So we're limited to the number of 3,
So it's all together, is it?
which means as far as
theirs, I'm talking this specific, so we just speaking in general, as
In general.
putting this on the books or that property specifically?
In general.
Gotcha, okay, all right, I got you. Okay.
Yes.
One of my fears because this is one of the largest houses in the city limits. It has 5 or 6 bedrooms, depending, and it has, I don't think it has 6 bathrooms, but it has a lot. My fear when they wanted to have it go commercial was that they had every intention of selling it as an income property and carving it up to make individual apartments in that home. That was my fear because they kept pushing the commercial. Because you can have a B&B anywhere in a residential area. It doesn't have to be commercial. So that's why my thought is simply that a home of that size, I don't know of anything larger that could have even the capability of housing more people. Especially if the owner has to be on premises, which I thought that was part of it.
That is part
It
of
is.
the language.
And all food will be cooked inside this B&B, right?
Breakfast.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the only
That's the only deal they can provide.
ordinance allowed.
Have we discussed anything else prior, or that was the?
That was
first
it,
time
we brought you right up to that.
Okay.
You have,
No, keep doing
go.
So, one of the things that I know all you guys are concerned about is that it has to be owner occupied while they're renting it.
Correct.
And Bruce has done a great job at drafting this thing, but my suggestion is, if you look at that second line, it says rental of a house and is the residence of the owner of the house. My suggestion would be to change it rental of the house while the owner is present. Because a residence, in other words, I can have a residence in St. Petersburg, Florida, say, but I'm not at it when I'm renting the house out. That was my only concern there. I would think that you'd want it as clear as you can, because every ordinance that I've looked at, and I've looked at a couple as well, and I've got the planning commission for Baton Rouge Parish is going through this process right now, and I have a summary sheet if y'all wanna see what their summary is. But they make it very clear that you have to have the owner on the premises at the time.
Right. And I think, on last week when I mentioned it, while I did my research, that was the biggest thing that I seen, that made a lot of municipalities go back and revisit what was on the books. Because a part of it was they were, renting these out. I think you can go through Airbnb or Vrbo or whatever it was, but there was no one who could actually oversee the property, and we know how that can go. But I don't think in Kentwood, I would say, most people who have Airbnbs, most of them are for you see it most of the time in like tourist cities and things like that, for people to come there. So I mean, it's kind of different for us to even be kind of but. So I think my primary thing with that, I think we definitely should look into making that an option on the books of having the owners there. So do they plan to? So no one stays there currently?
They live there
They
currently.
live there?
They live there.
So do they plan to continue to stay there while?
Well, at one point, they were entertaining selling it, and what we're talking about, and I think you may have been here when they were saying, prevent them from selling it to someone who would turn it totally, if we were giving it to them as commercial properties, and we change the zoning, and then they just change it into just 7 rooms and just renting it out to people to come and stay, and the owner's not on the premises.
So, Mayor, I'm sorry. Can I?
Go ahead.
So why are we just want to have this on the books, because why are we entertaining it if the house is up for sale?
Well, one of the other things that they said during the meeting, they wanted to look at some other viable, if they cannot sell it, to use it for B&B.
Because we don't want them just, no, anyway.
Mayor, I think, well, first and foremost, you still have to look at, you know, what our guidelines are gonna be in the ordinance. So although this may be what they want to do, they still would have to follow the stipulations and things that we put out there as well, such as one in particular, the permit. You know, how are we, what is gonna be the fee on that? So there are a number of things, and you know, as I drove here tonight, you know, just getting, I mean, I don't even think it's something that we could really do in just one meeting, you know, because there are just a number of things. And when I did my research, and the first thing you go to Google, you type in Airbnb, the first thing comes up are the common issues and problems that they had with it. So I think what we can do in creating this legislation is allow this particular property to kind of guide us, I would say, because I guarantee you later on, whether it's 4 years or 5 years from now, we'll come back to the table. Because that's what every municipality have done after they have passed it. So I think we should allow this property to guide us since they did bring it to the town. So at least put something on the books in regards to it. We can always come back and add and make changes. That's my way.
Yes.
You brought up a great point. It's really important for everybody to understand that there's a big difference between Airbnb, which you can rent without being there, and bed and breakfast, which is limited to a certain number of bedrooms and you have to be there. And so I think that what you guys are considering right now is just a bed and breakfast change to the residential district. And if I'm right, and Mr. Simpson can correct me, but because of the way it's done, it requires a special exception use, which means that anyone who wants to do this has got to make an application to the Board of Aldermen and come, and then you listen to it and you impose whatever other conditions you feel are appropriate. Is that right, Bruce?
I didn't have that in there anywhere.
Well, where you have it is in
Yeah.
section 60-24 under residential districts. And then you've got a new section that says special exception uses and structures, and you included bed and breakfast. And you've got a definition of bed and breakfast. So if you put those two together, then the only way that bed and breakfast is allowed in a residential district is as a special exception, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Which, and if I understand correctly, if you ask for, if you want to use your residential property as a special exception, you have to come before the board. Is that correct?
Right. I think that's one of the things I was.
Bruce, is that the case where if it's under the special exceptions that we're adding to the codes? Because I see this is number 4, so this is only in addition to section 60. It's not a new block, correct?
Say that again.
This being listed as number 4 under section 60-20 implies that there is a 1, 2, and 3 other special exceptions that exist in chapter 60, correct?
I do not, let me see. It doesn't, that number 4, yeah, that's just a list of regulations on R1.
Yes, so those list of regulations on R1 for 1, 2, and 3, are those provisions that you need to come to the board to get permission to act under?
Not all of them, no.
But this fourth
I mean,
one,
number 2 is permitted principal uses, conventional single-family detached home. Number 3 is permitted accessory uses and structures, any use related to principal use. Then you have special exceptions, which is where I put that. Then you have special permit uses and structures, and it specifically talks about if you have to get a permit, and that would be a church.
so since this one is a special exception and not a special permit, would you then not have to come to the board to get permission to act under number 4 from section 60-24?
That I do not know.
Mayor, if I may.
Yes, sir, go ahead.
Councilman Cool, I think, what Mr. Hayes is saying, I think he's referring to more so, which was gonna be the next thing I was gonna bring up, is more so the application process. So.
Whether you have to come here to use number
Right.
4 or not, that's my
Exactly.
question.
And it will, well, we have to decide that, because we're creating it from scratch, kind of, sort of, right? So we would have to agree as a board. It would kind of be similar to how we do the zoning ordinance, right? It would kind of be similar to that. So they would submit an application to the town, they would collect the fees, and we have to come up with what the permit looks like. So I know, so I had a chance, my schedule has been very busy, but I did have a chance to pull up what New Orleans had for theirs. Now this is really referred to in most ordinances, like Jefferson Parish, Orleans, I think maybe Mandeville.
I have New Orleans up here, and they have provisions up to 5 rooms.
Right. And so majority of them, we have, I think what we should do, we should have a complete section on short-term rentals, because that's pretty much what it is. A lot of them don't call them on their books, everybody, they call them short-term rentals, as far as writing it in, as far as the legislation. But I do think, that's why I say, this is definitely something that we probably won't solve tonight. But I definitely think that starting number one that we should discuss is the permit. What will this look like? You know, how much would they have to pay? The next thing, will we require them to make it a commercial property? If it's not.
That was the reason for this, to
Okay,
not
gotcha.
make it commercial.
So
Because it
okay,
exists
gotcha.
under a residential district. That, like, if you look at
That's
page 2, it being number 4 under special exceptions implies that this is an addendum to section 60-24 under residential already.
Gotcha. So what, I missed that part. So what's the reason for not making it commercial?
Because they will be allowed.
Neighborhood
they can do
cohesion.
Anything that they want to do with that piece of property to make it commercial.
If you make it commercial, someone could buy the property after them, and then they could put
What else?
a Dollar General there if they wanted to,
Gas station.
'Cause it's
or a
commercial.
gas station,
It's
etc.
commercial.
Gotcha. Okay. I got you. Okay. I was kind of looking at it just so.
Yes, ma'am.
I have a question. Here it says a residence that provides temporary or vacation rental. When we say temporary, how long does this be? Are we gonna have somebody just come in and just say a month or 2 or whatever?
I say no more than 30 days.
I know, but we don't have it.
Yeah, none of that is in there. That's what I say. Like all of these provisions have to be thought
Okay.
through.
What's gonna be the limit?
I say 2 weeks at the most.
Uh-huh.
Mr. Bruce, anything, that you've seen as far as the amount of length of time that they can occupy?
How would the time?
Covington limits it to 14 days.
14 days?
How do you enforce that? What's to stop? Okay, let's just say I'm gonna take the people in the audience we have there. What's to stop him from renting it out for 14 days under himself? He leaves. She rents it out for 14 days. They leave. Then they hop back and forth, and before you know it, they're there for 2 months. How are we enforcing this exactly?
Well, on our last meeting, I talked about we would have to have some type of enforcement. Someone from, and we talked about creating this in a part of mayor's administration. He would have to put someone in charge, because this is a totally different division now, where you're allowing short-term rentals. So someone will have to be responsible, if you would say, with trying to keep up or kind of monitor exactly what's going on with these properties. And that's what larger cities have, and that's how they're able to keep track of what's going on. When people get them, staying there turning short-term into long-term, things happen on the property that should not be happening. So someone definitely, because we can't just say it can happen and just leave it. Then we gotta decide with the permit, or is it gonna be annually, right? Or they got to come back each year to renew, so those things have to be talked about.
Since we just have specified in here that they need a business license, what is the current protocol for people that have business licenses in the town
That's what I was
when they need to renew them?
Renewal dates, or
Yearly?
annually, at the
Okay.
beginning of the year. But it depends on what type of business it is that sets how much the occupational license is.
So how
We
much
don't
would
have a
this one?
hotel here, so but I
Yeah.
mean,
How-
I could get that information and,
At the moment,
but I don't know.
how much would this license be?
Probably $50.
Okay.
It's not gonna be anything crazy. There could be a statute that sets out, it's all under the revised statutes. There could be one that, I'm sorry,
Go ahead.
that sets out like how much per room.
And
along
there are
with
some
that.
provisions other towns
Yeah.
have done with that, different fees attached on,
Right.
etc. Yeah.
Mr. George had something?
Yeah, I just want to answer your, or at least ask a question about your hypothetical. So what we're talking about is the maximum length of time that you can rent to Mr. Smith,
Mhm.
okay? So did your hypothetical suggest that I could rent to Mr. Smith for 2 weeks and then Susan could rent to Mr. Smith for 2 weeks? Because
Yeah,
you
what's
can-
to- what's
you
to
can
stop
address
people
that
from-
Very simply, no more than 2 weeks, the same, occupants, or, that kind of thing. I mean, the devil's always in the details, and you're gonna find that there's a lot of things like that that might slip through the crack. But my 2 cents on what Mr. Diamond said, or Councilman Diamond said, is that
Without having a.
you're right, you need somebody that's gonna be able to
I mean,
enforce it, but as a practical matter, you've got a plethora of ordinances on the books right now,
That's not good.
and you don't have a special, agency that's in charge of enforcing it, but, it's only my 2 cents, and obviously, you guys are doing a great job by addressing this and putting it on the books for future reference, but I don't see this becoming a big blossoming industry in Kentwood. Because as you mentioned, most of the time it's in a resort area.
Yeah, I would tell you, like, I couldn't find really, aside from, like I say, your big cities, Baton Rouge, but, I think one of their council people is just, they pulled it, maybe I think 2019, they yanked it completely to go back. I seen Orleans, that's pretty much it. I mean, most of them bigger cities, I never seen it.
And another question, like Councilman Cooper just brought out about permits and all that, Councilman Diamond also. So even if we put this in place, right, we got a lot to cover.
Right.
Even though it's in a residential area, will we charge them the residential rate for for sewer and water, or will we charge them commercial?
Now, here is Councilman Mayor, if I may.
Go ahead.
Okay, now here is Councilman Diamond, okay? With the revenue, right? Now they understand it's Kentwood, but we're not looking at Kentwood. We're looking at it being an Airbnb. With the revenue that they would be bringing in from this short-term rental, I think that we should charge them at a commercial rate. Most, as I say, on the books, looking at Orleans Parish, some of them go, starting with the permits, 500, not saying we should do that, but I'm just giving what I see, 500 up to $1,000. It depends on the property. Because if you have a home with 5 bedrooms, and you got people coming from all out of town and reading, so I definitely think, that's something we should think about. I said,
And we have it in here, says the owner shall meet all state, local fire, sanitation, and then we can add the verbiage in there.
right.
If we wanted to be charged a commercial rate or not. When we're talking about the 2-week period or the length of stay, how about we put some verbiage in there, say the 2 weeks period, and if you're coming back, you have to have a 7-day period or window before you can
totally agree.
occupy
I like
I
that.
totally agree.
the place again.
I like
Totally
it.
agree.
That wasn't my idea, that was the town clerk's.
Oh, okay, thank you. Yeah,
Great,
definitely.
great
I like that.
idea.
I like
So-
that.
A 7-day window between occupying periods.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And that way you can, and I think that's what a lot of municipalities ran into, that they didn't really think through.
Right.
Because you have these things, and people making big bucks, and then the local government is not seeing any of it.
Mhm.
And my, go ahead. Anybody else want to speak on the permit topic? Because I want to roll on.
I thought I saw your hand.
No, I'm good.
No.
I had a question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No. Are there any residences in Kentwood that are charged commercial sewer, water, gas?
Not if it's
That
not
we can
commercial
think of.
property, no.
So residential is charged residential, commercial is charged commercial. Okay.
Even some of the residences that have small businesses, like I know some people have hair salons, barber shops, etc., that they'll run out of, I guess, a shed or something like that. To my knowledge, I don't think those people would charge commercial. Usually, how people find a way around that, having to go and dig through that rabbit hole, is to just add on fees, like a hotel booking fee, an occupancy fee, whatever fee you really want to tack on. It all depends on what you can agree to put in the ordinance. That's, I think, would be the best route to get around that.
And when we were talking about it, this is just, we only have two designations. You either have commercial property or residential. So now we're going to be looking at something, and just to put it in your mind, what are we designating our church facilities as? You can't say it's residential. It's really not commercial. So we'll be coming back to the table soon to talk about, and maybe there's something we need to designate Airbnb as something other than commercial or residential.
Well, I just thought of a wonderful idea. Instead of finding another designation, why don't we hit the impact on the permitting fees? And there could be some sort of a percentage. If normally a business occupancy is $50, and you can figure out what is the difference between, in the percentages between residential utilities and commercial utilities, and find some sort of mathematical formula in there. If you're gonna have 3 rooms or 2 rooms designated, that's gonna up the utilities by X factor. Cause I think $50 would be minimally
that's-
painfully low.
Yes. Go ahead.
That's just for the, excuse me, occupational license. Now, what you all wanna set as an initial permitting fee to bring it to the council to get approved, and then bear in mind that the town has to go out and make sure that connections are correct.
Exactly.
You know, all of this, so
Manpower.
the town's spending money in time to verify all this information.
And that's
And make
why
sure,
I
and go
think-
back and check to make sure, I guess, that there is no one after the 7 days or how. So there's a lot built into that, what's called the permit,
I agree.
that should be assessed a valuable fee.
I totally agree.
Mhm.
Oh, yeah, I think $50.
So I think $50 is just.
No, that's the occupational license. You have to have the permit fee prior to getting an occupational license.
That's why.
We need to look into
Yeah.
bumping that up too.
Well, that's, by revised statute on the
Gotcha.
occupational
Gotcha.
license.
Point of information, you charge a sales tax, I know. Do you also charge an occupancy tax? I mean, we don't have any hotel rooms here,
We
so
don't,
we
there's no,
I would guess that you don't have anything like that, but that might be something you could add. Because New Orleans charges an occupancy tax as well. It's not a hotel tax that you see on the back of your hotel door, but it's similar. You know, I don't even know if you wanna play with that, because that would require them to file a return with you each month, telling you who they had, what they rented for, and maybe you don't want those headaches. Maybe you just wanna deal with it in your permit, jack the permit up to a number that
That's
will
right.
cover you
That's right.
on an average basis for your extra costs and things that are gonna be attributable to that, rather than make it difficult.
And I think, Ms. Hayes, that's what I struggle with, because, you know, Orleans and all these other, cities, their ordinance was so low.
Oh, yeah.
And it was just made up of, I mean, so many things, and they had it just broken down. I mean, you know, you had to, report this and report that, they had to take, so that was gonna be my next question, cause I'm out of town, and set up on that. As far as taxes, how would that work with the Airbnb, the bed and breakfast?
I don't know if they charge sales tax.
I see a designation here. One moment.
Now, everybody.
This the hotel occupancy privilege tax is charged to guests for the right to occupy sleeping rooms. This tax is in addition to sales tax and only applies to an establishment having 3 to 9 sleeping rooms, each having a private bath or shower, etc. That's all. All the extra stuff is for larger establishments, but it does set forth that there is a sales tax that is charged at the premises.
Well, and I hate to bring up Florida, but the way Florida handles this, they have a lot of Airbnbs because it's all beach.
Right.
And Airbnb, if you wanna rent it, you go online and you find a town, you wanna
It's
go
very
there,
different
pick out
than an
that
official
house,
bread and breakfast.
and you register with Airbnb or VRBO, whichever one you're dealing with, and they keep a record. The state of Florida now requires Airbnb to provide the records for that particular residence for that particular month. So they foist the problem on to Airbnb, and then all the clerk does is multiply the tax times the revenue.
Right.
But that's Airbnb, where you book through the mothership, if you will, rather than a little bed and breakfast, which is where you just buy, now, I don't know if you guys stay in bed and breakfast or you don't.
I have before.
We have one that's our favorite, and we always go there, but the way you work it, you just call them up, I'm coming, that kind of stuff. And so it's a different platform, and what I was suggesting is that the tax is the best way to go, because you catch it every time, but it's labor intensive, it's data intensive. Like these people, if they were gonna operate a B&B, they'd have to give you a monthly, return that says, okay, the month of February, I rented it out 6 times, my total collections were X, and then, times whatever your rate is, the tax I need to pay you is Y. And then some months they wouldn't have any rents, and they would just have all zeros down there. And then you've gotta bring that to the clerk, and the clerk gotta take it and make sure that it's accurate and this, that, and they collect the money, deposit the money. It's kind of a pain. If you guys can get your money that is going to be what's needed to pay for the extra services that you might have and anything else in the permit fee, that's the way you should do it, and do it once a year. The wonderful thing about Kentwood, like you mentioned a moment ago, is that we're a much simpler place.
Exactly.
Mayor,
Yes.
I've been sitting here listening to all this, but that's exactly, we should have just, to have administration to do everything, just have one rate, pick a number, whatever, charge them that annual, and, just go with that. So they come with all these other things, taxes and fees and stuff, trying to see how many times somebody's in there a month or a year, weeks at a time, whatever. I mean, I don't think it should matter. This one bed and breakfast, I don't think we're gonna be overrun with them, have enough where we'd have to start a separate division in the town. I would be just for, just come up with a set fee and go with that.
Yeah.
Yes.
My only thing is, when you look at the amount of money, and we don't know what the potential earnings could be. We don't know. But when you look at the amount of income that could be, or the revenue that could be generated from this, it just would not sit well with me charging, and I understand the part about the workman administration, but it would not sit well with me as a councilman, knowing that we charge them, let's say what be I'm gonna live, but let's say we did $100. I'm gonna go high, but let's say we did $100. That's it. I mean, I feel like they should be taxed, treated like a hotel. That's why I say I think it's.
If you
it's
treat
going
them
to
like a
take-
hotel in that respect, then giving them commercial, I guess, taxes for it, then also giving them the provision that they can only have a set amount of rooms while they have to have, which is a residential restriction that we're making here,
Right.
and then slapping on commercial obligations on the tax floor. I don't really think that's fair. I just don't.
And I mean, that's something that we still thinking through, but I'm saying, okay, let's say if this do take off, right, and it becomes bigger than what we
I
are
don't
seeing,
think it will from the size.
but you never know. You never know. There's a possibility anything can, right? So I'm just saying, not as far as in the town seeing Airbnbs, but I'm talking about their business specifically, as far as people renting rooms and different things like that. I mean, let's say in a year, just hypothetically, they bring in over 20 grand. What is the town benefiting off of it? We just letting the money go
Sales
into the
tax.
pocket of the owners?
Sales
Sales
tax.
That's my question. We breaking the taxes down. So how would that look for them, for the owners, as far as when it comes to taxes? How would that work? Since it's something new that we're implementing. How would they do that?
They didn't have to deal with
The
it.
owners.
Because they're gonna have
They
to
gotta
pay their
deal with
taxes.
that, right?
I know, so that's what I'm saying. So how does that look for the town?
Oh.
So in our process of creating this, if that,
Yeah,
everybody
Bates,
get
I
what
have
I'm
a
saying?
second. I have a
So
second
it
thing
will-
after him.
Yeah, I hear you, I'm.
Oh yeah, I know you
I'm-
process that.
and
I'm
trying-
saying, so if we're, I don't, this is this is something totally new that we're bringing, a short-term rental, okay? So how does that work?
You talking
So
about
it
the
will allow,
sales tax?
right, so let's say the sales for them.
So you,
So what do they do?
so,
That's what I'm-
Ms. Michelle can address that. What do they do with sales tax? They gotta go, go ahead.
Go ahead.
They'll register with the school board office and report the income,
Mhm.
and they'll pay the percentage of sales tax that they're required to pay through the sales tax office, and it'll be distributed back to us like our normal sales
That's right.
tax.
It's exactly the same as when we have the Mardi Gras festival. Essentially, that's why I wasn't really seeing where that was coming from. It would be essential if we said to the people that did the Mardi Gras festival, the vendors that take part in it, yes, they are selling goods and services, some of them, but they are paying the sales tax to the school board. If we were to then go through and put a commercial tax on them the same way we do, let's say, maybe Dollar General or so, we're giving them commercial obligations when they don't have commercial footing that the store does.
That's why we need to go back and, like Gary said, put the fees in the permit, and let them deal with their own stuff and not put that on them. If they gonna have a B&B, hey, okay, not $100, say $250. I'm just saying.
I'll say 1,200.
Well, that's fine with me.
Yeah, I'm telling
I
you,
did.
that's what that's
Yeah,
my point,
he's-
because
right.
the amount of money that they
Oh,
will be bringing
I
in.
told, I was just throwing
Yeah,
it
yeah,
out there.
I'm with you. I agree.
Right.
You know,
It's
I
gonna
mean,
have to be.
it's- so now, because we're allowing this particular situation to kind of guide us with this, do they currently have a business name? Or what are they, you know?
I
No,
don't
and that's
think they-
something I was wanting to get to with
you know,
mine.
Go ahead.
I don't think that, I'm gonna make this statement, then I'll come to you. I don't know if they have thought that far down the road simply because they wanted to see if it would be allowed. I think now that they are aware, they really don't have to come before us in order to do it. So it's important that we
Do
make
these.
sure
Okay,
we
we'll have
do.
to come forward.
Yeah, so, go ahead, Mr. Chair.
As talking about the sales tax, I mean, it's not a lot, but depending on the dollar amount of the business, and they're only required to serve them breakfast, right?
Right.
They've got to eat somewhere else, so you'd think that they would eat, within the town, you would hope, so that might be a few more dollars,
Right.
outside of that.
Okay.
And I just thought of something else. What about signage? Are they going to be allowed to put a cute little sign in the front of the yard that says so-and-so B&B, house built 18 whatever? It's a residential area. If that was my neighbor, I wouldn't want an
Right.
advertisement next to me.
And in my opinion, if it's not commercial, no sign. That's just me, because
Maybe
if you
something
go into
discreet on the
advertising.
front door in a 12 by 12 or a 16 by 10, but not a sign planted in the front yard, my opinion.
'Cause it would
That's
be
a great point.
commercial.
I didn't even think about signage, so, thank you.
I want neighborhoods to look nice.
And that's something we have to address next door too, so.
So
Yeah,
listen,
please.
are you saying, so is that a concern, or you was just speaking of an idea?
Oh, no, that's a concern.
Gotcha. Explain it one more time.
Lots of places will
Mhm.
have designations where they could put a sign
Mhm.
similar to those 4x4 posts that you see for sale.
Right.
And they could put something really cute, very artistically and lovely done that says so-and-so house, they could name their house,
Mhm.
established 18 whatever, B&B. And a phone number.
Right.
I don't want that.
Gotcha. Okay, I got it. Yeah, exactly.
Word of mouth is generally how these things are done. We keep throwing the word Airbnb around, but
That's different.
That's way
That's a
different.
singular
That's right.
business
That's
that you
right.
can
This
go
is a
and
bed
find
and
B
breakfast.
and B's on.
Right.
But this would be a word of mouth thing, and I don't think anybody's gonna be driving down Avenue E
So we need to put that in there, don't we?
looking for a B and B.
Right.
So you're gonna know it, right? You're gonna
Right.
know where you're going. If they wanted a discreet sign on the front porch or something, one of those bronze plaques, I don't think that's even necessary. But I would just wanna say, no signage or advertisements.
Because we're in a
On the
residential
property.
area too.
Right, that's right, and that's
A
what I
great
say,
point.
if we go into allow them to do that advertising, I mean, then it basically becomes a, commercial property, so.
Be discreet.
Right, yeah, and that's primarily what, and I know we keep, keep this new thing with saying Airbnb, but it's really, the correct terminology is really just a short-term rental, that's what's on everybody's ordinances. But, most of the Airbnbs, they are discreet, that's pretty much what it is. I mean, there's, when you pull up, I've been to many,
And you get a big
Florida, Texas, all over, but I mean, when you pull up, there's no big sign out there that just says Airbnb, et cetera.
I know
This
what
is
you're
someone's
saying.
property, So, and I agree, that's a valid point, and they should treat it as such, so I agree.
And I'm with the clerk. I know I'm out of order, Mayor. I'm sorry because I didn't get recognized. But we need to go and say it. If we gonna say $1,000, $1,200, let's go and put that in there tonight. And hey, let's agree on that tonight. We'll have our money.
I back agreeing with that. The amount should be higher, 1,000, 1,200, somewhere in there. They're not gonna turn in sales tax to
Exactly,
to go with
Lord.
that. I don't care.
Exactly. Exactly.
And the amount we get out of $20,000 of sales is 400 or so,
Probably 200,
200,
yeah, out of
So-
20,000.
you know. If
Yeah.
And
they're
if
serious
that-
about doing it,
That will go. That's what I was
I,
going to say.
a reasonable number, but high enough to where it would behoove us to do it.
I disagree. I mean, New Orleans charges $200 for the size B&B that we are setting as the max. I mean, I don't want to be greedy here.
But look at the time. Compare New Orleans to Kentwood too.
I know, but this is also
They
just
probably
talking about
have-
one
They
B&B.
probably have an official that
Do they,
strictly
I have
just
it, though.
deals
Yeah, they have to
with
have-
that too.
yeah.
So, but there are so many different, like, for example, short-term rental permit fees, they have one, short-term rental, partial unit residential, short-term rental, small residential, partial unit 250, small residential 500, large residential 500.
What's
Type
the
C
room
commercial,
size?
1,000.
What's the
So-
room size on the 1,000?
Or
Or
it
room
doesn't, it's
rate?
just, so the one I'm looking at is the section that says short-term rental permit fees. So
How
it
many
doesn't-
rooms?
It doesn't say specifically.
This one says bed and breakfast family home, i.e. where 1 or 2 rooms are available per rental per year, fee $200. City of New Orleans.
And I mean,
But does that also include the tax? I'm
tax.
sure that in New Orleans.
Sales tax.
I'm
Sales
sure
tax is listed as what will be rendered for this. In addition to the fees, which
Yeah.
honestly, these are pretty paltry in my opinion, for occupancy,
Okay, so they're
license, etc.
They're collecting tax, sales tax
Mhm.
on the revenues that
Yes.
are brought in.
Mhm.
Okay, well, you guys aren't gonna impose a tax, from what I understand.
Well, we need to impose sales tax. I mean, I'm definitely not for letting
That's
them
the
get away
idea
with that.
of the one
That's already
fee.
in there.
So
I know,
we
so
get
we'd
it
be
up front.
getting that automatically. So
So,
what's
I
the
mean,
question?
comparing
I'm
us
sorry, I
to
didn't hear anybody
$200,
say that they were going to impose sales tax and actually follow through on it. But if that's what's gonna happen, you get my vote. Because if you're gonna get the revenue, then that's the fairest way.
Yeah, we absolutely
Collecting.
need to get the revenue. Yeah.
But
God bless you. I
but
don't see
who's
it
this-
happening every day.
But who's to say they're going to turn in?
they're not.
well,
We revoke their business license if they don't turn it in. It's what we do with vendors.
How do you know that
Oh,
they're
do
not
we?
turning
Right.
it in?
How do you
How do
check?
they
We
are?
wouldn't get anything from them. We would
But what
therefore
I'm saying, the
revoke
right
them.
amount.
There is currently a list of people that are not allowed to be itinerant vendors in town because they didn't turn in their sales tax. So the idea that we would have absolutely no clue if they don't turn in their sales tax is completely absurd.
Well, I agree with you. It shouldn't be a given. It shouldn't be a given. But my question to the council and maybe to Ms. Anthony is,
how do you collect sales tax on every single business that's here? Each month, does a donut shop give you a return and tell you what their sales were?
Exactly.
Okay, is that the way it is on every single business?
Go ahead.
We get a report from the school board office of sales tax to Kentwood, and that's how we know how much sales tax we have the revenue for it every month. Okay.
Let me ask it a different way. How does the school board,
They,
Or
they
whoever-
file their report every month.
okay, so.
We know,
We
I
really
don't
don't
think
know.
they go out and knock on the door and say,
No.
you sold 20 donuts instead of 10 this month, now give me that other
That's all
money.
I'm saying.
That's not the way it works.
It's-
No, I agree with you, and that's what,
Yeah.
that was the point. So yes,
They're not
yes, you should collect
That's
sales
right,
tax.
right.
But as a practical matter, the apparatus is not here. And so you could get away with not paying sales tax. And so if you're going to, I don't know, maybe the school board is gonna take their numbers and run it through with however many people they have, and maybe that works for you, I don't know. But what I'm trying to say to you is you probably ought to look at it as apples and oranges, because I don't think it's the same.
Well, when they collecting our money, they collecting their money too, so they gonna be watching a little closer.
And they have a much
Exactly.
bigger, they have a much bigger staff to do that with, and I appreciate that.
They're not quite concerned about our money as they are theirs, I can tell you that.
Huh?
They're not quite concerned about our money as they are theirs, I can tell you that.
Yeah, but if a percentage is a percentage, if they paying our percentage
That's what I'm
on
saying, so it should
the
not,
income,
it shouldn't, you know.
What they're doing, they're paying, they're telling you our sales was this. And they turn that in for sales tax. We don't know what their sales were. That's what they tell us they are.
Mhm.
So it's just an honor system with them. We don't check on them. I don't
it's
know.
not an honor
in the years-
system, the
in the
school
years-
board audits people.
in the
Yeah,
years
so
years
it's-
ago,
hold on,
so we
Gary.
never audited.
One second, one second. I saw your hand first, and then we'll come to you, Ms. Michelle.
On a personal note, how many people did I pay money to after the hurricane? And they would say 600, and I'd say cash, and they'd go 500. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Right.
So
Y'all
that
didn't get a
recording.
penny of it.
Right.
It does happen.
How many businesses in town are strictly cash businesses? And it doesn't get reported. But when you're Dollar General or Sullivan's or whomever, and you swipe a credit card or a debit card, and it's a I don't wanna say professional business, but it's different than one of our thrift stores where there's bargaining, or a haircut, or whatever.
The only point I was trying to make was that when you compare the fees that New Orleans charges for a permit, they're also getting sales tax, maybe occupancy tax, and they have a much larger machine that collects
That's all I
them.
was saying.
And
And they got
That's all.
Yeah, go ahead.
They definitely.
If you wanted to put it back on the owner of the property, they could notify us each time they got a rental. We could charge them per day so much for the rental. And at the end of the year, we would know how many days, how much was charged, and what they should have paid in sales tax, and what they should pay us on a nightly fee. Put it back on them.
Works for me, but who's gonna do it?
It's the same difference. You're gonna have somebody eyeballing them either way you do it. Or you just set the fees
Right.
and that's what it is.
I think that's.
I think that's the
You know.
best things.
Because you
As small as
can't
we are, that's all
run
we have to do.
behind someone,
No.
no matter who it is. Not saying that they would do that, but
It has
there's
been
an
done.
opportunity for anyone to do it.
Jotting these notes down. Any other?
And one thing I want us to understand that, there is no pressure for us to rush into this. So I don't want it to be like, just tonight that this has to be done. I think because of the legality, we don't wanna just get in a rush tonight and just throw something in an ordinance. Because it can get very sticky. It can. You know, it just can. You know, I researched it and look, when I type it in, the first thing that come up are common problem. And why people did it. And let's be clear, we could snatch this away at any point. But I just don't want us to think that just tonight that this just have to be done. I'm just being honest. You know, I just don't think we're ready. You know, I just think that there are some more things that just need to be talked about. And I think that we can create what I would say a punch list of the specific things that everyone wants to see in the ordinance, if that makes sense, man. You call that, man?
Yeah, well, what I'm thinking is all of the things that we're talking about tonight, along with Ms. Anthony, we are recording, and we get these things and we see if we can incorporate it in here
Right.
within the next week or so and get it back out to you all and let you look at it
Right.
and see if it meets the criteria what we think in order to happen. And if we have to have another meeting, and I know we're not in a hurry to do this,
Right.
because we wanna do it right, because we're gonna have to revisit it anyway.
Exactly.
because,
That's right.
So we'll do that.
Yeah, man, so you just want you, I definitely, agree with that. I think that is the best way for us to collaborate on this is to, you know, between, you know, your office as well as the attorney, to kind of draft up what do we want this to look like. And I think that will help me a whole lot. And I will be able to take the time to kind of go through it and make the necessary recommendations and, you know, so yeah, definitely, we should do that. But I just don't want us to think that, we just gotta, you know, do this tonight, cause there's a lot that, goes into that.
Well, Councilman Diamond, we can go on and on and on and on and on, but it's gotta be a point that we have to do something.
Yeah,
And the mayor got notes, the clerk has notes, they're gonna put it in. And if you think of something else, just call them where they can put it in so we can move the process forward.
yeah.
I agree, because it's been about two meetings that we've kind of tabled this, saying that we will look into it, we will make a punch list, we will do etc. It's going to be the third meeting we bring this back to then, I guess, research it again, table it again. Well, when are we finally going to solve this?
Well,
This is, let me do this. This is, I'm looking at my calendar, and I think we can turn around as far as get this language and verbiage in there by Tuesday of next week. We can send it out to you all and let you look at it and see if it's kind of going along the line, because we probably gonna have to come back and look at it again. Hopefully we can do a better job with some of the language, make sure we have it in there and get it sent out to you all on the 15th. Give you a couple of days to look it over before the next meeting. That means we'll have at least another 2 weeks before we have our next official meeting.
I also want to make sure in the deliberations that we're having on creating this ordinance, I want to make sure that we are creating this as a general guideline for the town, and we aren't creating it in reference to the case that brought this up to us. Like, we aren't making this law for a specific property, for a specific individual, for a specific plan. We need to make it in general for any hypothetical B&B that might come up to us again, that might not have the same stipulations of this. Because let's just say hypothetically, a place like the sale barn on the other side of town. Let's say we annex more land outward that might be residential, and it might be several times larger than the case that brought this, what started as a variance, up to us. Are we going to restrict them to the same sizing requirements, the same fees that we're putting on, despite the fact that they might be a larger entity? We need to make sure that our law works in its generality and it has different provisions for different size. So it isn't relating just to the person that brought this up.
Okay, so now, I'll get to you, Councilman, let me address that. So what we were saying earlier was If they get above X amount of rooms, it starts to be designated as a hotel.
With that, I'm glad you said that, because in Hammond's Code of Ordinances, I had to find the file. One moment, it's in Safari, I apologize. In Hammond's Code of Ordinances, there is a bed and breakfast inn, which goes up to 6 rooms, and there is a bed and breakfast residence, which is 1 and 2 rooms. This one, right now, just says plain bed and breakfast, only 2 rooms.
So what
So
we
that
have to
means
do-
at that point we have to come back and add even more. Why don't we, the cat's out of the bag since they already came and kind of caused this and we are writing this, why don't we just solve it by making distinctions ahead of
We can put all
time?
that language in here. That's why we're asking, once we write it up, we send it to you. If there's something else that you see that needs to go in here, you let us know. So what happens is if it gets above X amount of rooms, now you become designated as a hotel and you have to pay those taxes as a hotel. Councilor Donovan, you had something?
I was just saying, that just justifies Councilman Cooper, what I just said. Exactly how you brought bigger than what's in front of us, that's what I was saying. So, and my point was not to stall, but to be sure that everybody get to think this through. Because, and what you said, it's true. Generalize it, but we can't generalize it in 2 weeks. Maybe maybe we can. But I mean, to properly do this the right way. Now, and I get what you're saying. We don't want to allow this just about the current situation, about the laws and the things that we're making.
We need to make the laws above the current situation.
And I agree with that. But pretty much that's what it'll become anyway, because you're going to adjust your ordinances by the things that you see going on in your town. So if this happens to grow in our town, that's how we make the change. And I think that's what every other municipality have went through.
Because
seen it.
I'm only saying this in regard to let's like the White Magnolia thing out there. Well, let's just say, what if there was something like that in town? I don't want later on down the road something like that comes to town, someone builds this and they want it to be a B&B, and then we are faced with, again, we are making laws in reference to a specific person instead of making laws in reference to it just being a general provision.
That's why, as you think of things, call the mayor, call the clerk, and
Councilman Hooper, I think I don't think it's us thinking through it. I think it's a matter of having something to start with, the framework, if I make sense. So it's not necessarily Zay leaving here and then on Tuesday of next week I think of something new. But what I'm saying is once we are provided the framework, we need something to start with, more than what we have tonight, if that makes sense. So kind of similar to how the attorney created this ordinance, we need something to start with. So from the framework, that's when I will begin to help us, make the decisions about how we want to move forward. But it's not just us thinking of ideas, but we just have to have the framework. And that's when I brought up to Mayor, I call it a punch list. In other words, I mean permit. We already covered the tax situation. So that's what I mean by punches, but he already have a solution to that. But we definitely need the framework.
The framework is really whatever we decided to. I mean, some towns even have provisions where in certain districts you can only color the building certain colors. I mean, it's really whatever we come up with and whatever we can
Yeah, but
decide.
somebody have to type the framework. You see what I'm saying? So somebody has to. It's just like creating a bill that you won't pass in the House. Somebody has to type it.
It's on Unicode. Just copy it.
Tre'Von. But that's what I'm saying. We don't. My question, Mayor, who is going to be responsible for providing us with the framework? Who is the creator?
The attorney and myself and the town clerk will get together with these ideas.
All right,
And we will get, like I said, we'll
That'll
get
work.
it back to you by
I
the
understand.
15th of what we discussed here tonight.
Right.
And that way we can look at it, and if there are some changes and we need to come back to the
That'll
table,
work.
we'll do so.
Yes, sir. I agree. That'll work.
Any other, go ahead.
Is this gonna be an annual permit?
I say
I
yes.
would.
Okay, and then is there gonna be a fine if they do not abide by?
I would.
What
Okay.
Baton Rouge does is if you don't abide by it, you lose the ability to rent for a year.
For a year, right.
Yep.
Okay,
I
Okay,
agree.
annual permit.
And that needs
I
to be
believe in
reflected.
similar situations, we've sent a cease and desist of business or something like that if
Yeah.
all regulations are not followed through with.
Any other questions or things?
Sounds like a good list to me.
Any other, anybody else? Thank you, meeting adjourned.
The framework for those ordinances, you can just go on Unicode and copy them, because I've written ordinance drafts that I brought here. You just go on, you copy paste it on a Word document, you type in what you want, and then you decide if the rest of the board thinks it's a good idea or
The
not.
framework for how many hours to.
Yeah, I have a blank template.
What the clerk has, how she hours to look, not no other city. We'll create Kentwood Street. Our
Yeah,
framework.
I have a document of all of them.
Thank you, Councilman Cook. Our framework.
Exactly.
Hey,